Can Liz Truss survive?
No, I think the game's up. And it's now a question as to how the succession is managed.
Well, if the game's up for her, how could that succession be managed? Let me put it bluntly to begin with. How would you get rid of her?
Well, George was speaking to some of the mechanisms earlier. If there is such a weight of opinion in the parliamentary party that we have to have a change, then it will be affected. Exactly how it's done and exactly under what mechanism, but it will happen.
Can Liz Truss do that? Can Liz, or is the only way to fill that gap with someone else in charge?
So I think we need to look and see what's happening, how the markets will respond to the further detail that's going to come out. As was said earlier, this covers about £32 billion a year, and there is a gap to fill. We need to give a bit more confidence in terms of how we're going to go about filling that gap. But one of the things that I would say is that members of Parliament are typically incredibly optimistic people, and they're always hoping that, this will be the solution and we can rally behind it and go forward. I think there's also a huge gap between what MPs will say in private and what they're willing to say in public. This morning, I will narrow that gap significantly and say that we should not have ever been in this situation. What Conservative Party members voted for over the summer was the right thing to do in terms of what had been pre-announced over that period of time and what had been campaigned on. Had that been stuck to, the markets would have priced that in and, we still would have had a bit of difficulty, but we saw a huge package to support people with their energy. I think it's right that we're looking at that again. And we saw those unfunded tax cuts. Had that not happened, the markets would not have responded in the way that they did. We would not be seeing the fact that there's potentially an extra £10 billion that we've got to try and plug. And I believe that's 100% down to the Prime Minister, I'm afraid. And so I just don't think that it's tenable that she can stay in her position any longer. And I'm very sad to have to say that.
How many more mistakes can she afford to make?
Well, I suspect, given how skittish our politics are at the moment, not very many, but she wouldn't have wanted to have made the mistake that she's made. To her credit, she has owned it and apologised for it. But my experience of the Prime Minister when she was Foreign Secretary and Secretary of State for International Trade, and the international-facing departments work quite closely as we deliver our nation's foreign policy, is that the Prime Minister makes good decisions based on the evidence. She listens to her officials. And throughout her time as Secretary of State for International Trade and Foreign Secretary, I think her record shows that. There is no hiding from the fact that a mistake was made around the mini-budget, but it's one that she has owned and apologised for. And now, crucially, the country needs its government to get on with the task at hand, because there is an awful lot in the in-tray.
How many more mistakes can she make for you?
Well,
I just said too many.
Okay, I just said I don't think that there's the opportunity to make any more mistakes, because the nation needs a government that is governing well and is making good decisions.
The day of this new statement, this budget statement, everything rides on that, is what I think you just said. If that doesn't restore confidence in the markets, she's gone.
No, I think that's exactly right, Matt. I think a huge amount rests on that. If that statement, and God forbid, I hope this won't be the case, but it doesn't manage to satisfy the markets and satisfy everybody else, and the economy is still in chaos, then I think we would be in a very difficult situation. But I'm not anticipating that happening. I think Jeremy Hunt is a man of sufficient calibre that he will come up with a solution that does command the confidence of the markets. And let's hope, for the British people's point of view, that does happen, because I think there are an awful lot of your listeners out there that must be very, very worried about how they're going to pay their energy bills and mortgages this winter.
The power in Downing Street is in number 11, not number 10. I think Jeremy Hunt is de facto Prime Minister at the moment. And I hope that he will be able to. He's a very experienced man. He's had long experience in cabinet. He's been Foreign Secretary as well as the Health Secretary. He's a businessman, a self-made businessman. He understands economics. And I think he can get this right. But it's quite clear that all the shots are now being called from number 11. And in a way, I have to say I'm very pleased that they are, because I think that will stabilise the markets. And I hope that we can find a way forward for the United Kingdom, for our country.
Her promised tax cuts are now not happening. She promised public spending would not be cut. You're now saying very clearly, for reasons you've explained, that public spending might be cut. She has ditched central parts of her agenda. It's gone. And it seems you're setting much of the direction.
She has changed the way we're going to get there. She hasn't changed the destination, which is to get the country growing. I think she's right to recognise in the international situation, the market situation, that change was necessary, but she is absolutely determined to deliver that economic growth that's going to bring more prosperity to ordinary families up and down the country.
You've written an article in The Times this week saying that the new government is blowing up the Conservative Party and the country. I mean, I think many would look at the events of the last few weeks and agree with you, but can you just explain what you mean by that?
Well, I worry that over the past few weeks, the government has looked like libertarian jihadists and treated the whole country as kind of laboratory mice in which to carry out kind of ultra free market experiments. And this is not where the country is. There's been one horror story after another. It's not just about tax cuts for the rich, but about benefit cuts to public services. Even today, we're reading that they may impose charges on long-term sick and disabled who are parking at hospitals. And this is not what the public wants. And I really believe that the Prime Minister, given everything that has gone on, needs to set out, do a fireside chat to the British people, apologise for what has gone on, and set out a vision for compassionate conservatism with social justice.
She is Pino, Prime Minister in name only at the moment, and I would think the most likely outcome is that she falls before Christmas. But one thing that recent weeks has taught you is that things are unpredictable, and it's possible to imagine a situation where she completely resets, she completely U-turns on the mini-budget, she does a reshuffle, brings in the Sunak supporters into the cabinet, and is out there fronting things in the way that at the moment she is hiding in number 10, trying to avoid fronting things, and owns the reset, owns the relaunch. Of course, when you say it, it sounds like a bit of a long shot, but that's all that's really left for her at this point.
Only a long shot.
How much trouble is the Prime Minister in, though?
Well, we can all read the polls, and I don't need to tell you what the atmosphere is like at Westminster, and people will be weighing up what the Prime Minister said last night, that she had made mistakes, that she'd learned from those, and that the measures that Jeremy Hunt had put in place seemed to be providing the necessary economic stability in the markets. I say that because the economic stability in the markets is key for a Conservative government. If the markets don't believe that a Conservative government is able to manage public finances sensibly, then that government has had it. So that really is the number one priority. And I think that most of my colleagues will be looking to see if the measures being put in place have achieved their effect. It looks at the moment as though they have. That will take the political temperature down somewhat.
What is the point of her carrying on, given all that you have just said about the way the government needs to behave now?
Well, I think there is an opportunity here. I think, Liz, for the Prime Minister to have acted as she did on Friday and to bring a very seasoned, experienced cabinet minister back into the fold, I think that is a very, very good step, and she is to be commended for that.
But what's the point of her now? How does she lead?
Well, that will be for the Prime Minister to set out, I think, in the coming days and weeks. She's coming to the One Nation caucus. We do our very best and a very warm, welcoming audience for cabinet ministers, and we will be at the forefront of our mind. We'll be asking her questions as to how she intends to emphasise our compassionate conservative principles that have won us elections since 2010.
And talking of elections, do you want her to lead you into the next election?
She is the Prime Minister at the moment. We will not have an election for the next couple of years. I want her to get us back onto the right track. I want her to reiterate our concerns for our constituents and for compassionate one nation values.
But you want her to lead you into the next election.
If she's able to bring those values to the fore, then I'm very happy for her to do that. But we really have got to get back to these values now. That it's why I and lots of other people came into politics, looking after our constituents, caring for the most vulnerable, and also caring for those people in the middle at the moment.